There is a quote of Sharda Ma that people find very difficult to understand. So let us see what this quote is and then we will dive into the explanation. So somewhere Sharda Ma has said that in the course of time one does not feel even the existence of God. After attaining enlightenment, that is after attaining to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, one sees that gods and deities are all Maya. So whenever I have put this quote on Instagram, people always get very confused. Their confusion is reflected in their comments. So let us see what these are. So one person has remarked that this philosophy feels kind of heartbreaking at times. And his sentiments are better expressed by another person who has said, no, gods and deities are not Maya. They are created by Maya, but they are as much real as the God without form. Here this person is of course paraphrasing Sri Ramakrishna, and then this person continues, the highest of the highest saints have always preferred the form and its glories. Form is the closer version of that nothingness or Brahman. Both paths are real. So before we proceed to answer this question, that how can God be Maya? Before we do this, I'd like to offer a clarification, which is that according to Advait Vedanta, Brahman is not nothingness. Nothingness means that there is absolutely nothing, that there is a vacuum, a void. But Brahman is something, and that something is pure consciousness. We know that there is no matter, there is no space, and there is no time in Brahman. These three do not exist in the realm of Brahman. But still we cannot say that Brahman is nothingness, because there does exist something, and that something is the Satchit Ananda pure consciousness. The Upanishads for this reason say Prajnanam Brahm. So Brahman is not nothingness. It is the ultimate substrate of pure consciousness that underlies the whole universe. Now coming to Sharda Ma's quote, let us understand why she said that after Nirvikalpa Samadhi, one sees that even gods and goddesses are Maya. The real reason why people get confused by this statement is because there is a vast gulf that separates Sharda Ma's perspective from ours. Sharda Ma existed in an extremely high state of divine consciousness, whereas we exist in a low, restricted state of human consciousness. You must have all seen the movie Lion King. What happens in that movie? In that movie, the Lion King ascends a very high cliff from where he can survey his entire kingdom. And therefore, the perspective of this Lion King is very different from that of the deer standing in the valley at the bottom. If the lion says, there is a blue river flowing 3 miles to our west, the deer will wonder, what is the lion talking about? There is no river here. So this is the gap in their perspectives. The lion is stating the truth from a different vantage point, which the deer cannot see. And the same is the problem here. In order to understand Sharda Ma's perspective, we have to properly gauge how different she was from us, how high up in spirituality she was compared to us. We have to understand what a huge gap separates her from us. You know, when we go to a temple, we see the idols of Sri Krishna, we see Sri Ram, we see Sita, we see Shiva, we see the Divine Mother Kali, all these various gods and goddesses that we see in the idol form. Sharda Ma used to see them live, pratyaksh, that is face to face. She could not only see them, she could talk to them, she could ask them questions, and she could hear their answers. Can you or I converse with God? Can we know God's opinion on a certain issue? We can't because we don't exist in that high state of consciousness. We can only see God as an idol in a temple. But Sharda Ma was not like this. She used to see the various gods and goddesses of Hinduism in their true living state. Just like we see a person, she would see gods and goddesses like that. In fact, Sometimes Sri Ramakrishna would ask Shardama for her opinion on certain things, but she would never give her opinion right away. She would tell him, "I will discuss with Ma Kali and get back to you." This was the extent of her bond with Ma Kali. She would see the Divine Mother Pratyaksh face to face, whereas we can only see her as an idol in a temple. So she would put her questions to Mother, and Ma Kali would resolve all her doubts and concerns. So now the point for us to think is that Shardama, who could see and converse with the living form of the Divine Mother Kali, she is saying that once you get established in the highest, the most difficult to attain Nirvikalpa Samadhi state, in that state, even these forms of God and goddesses feel unreal. They appear as Maya. So you can see what an incredible statement she is making. A person who could see Ma Kali face to face is saying that in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, even this form of Ma Kali appears unreal. Now this statement of hers is not at all contradictory. It is a perfectly truthful statement coming from a person who was established in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Because in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, when Shardama's consciousness had merged in the infinite divine consciousness, all differentiation of name and form vanishes in that cosmic consciousness. All the different gods and goddesses that we worship as Shiva, Kali, Krishna, Rama, Sita, etc., all the names and forms of God coalesce. They merge into one supreme existence, into one supreme God known as Brahman. All of us would have seen a prism. What happens when a ray of light passes through the prism? It breaks up into the constituent colors. Similarly, when the ray of Brahman passes through the prism of Maya, that is, it passes through space, time and causation. This is the definition of Maya that has been given by Swami Vivekananda himself. He has said that Maya is space, time and causation. So when the ray of Brahman passes through Maya, it appears broken up into the various gods and goddesses. But we should not think that these gods and goddesses are separate from Brahman. They are never separate from Brahman. These gods and goddesses are simply names of his different qualities. Just as the various colors of light are simply different modes of vibration of the same light, similarly the gods and goddesses of Hinduism are simply names and forms of the various aspects and powers of one supreme God or Brahman. For this reason, the Vedas say, Ekameva Dvitiyam. There is only one God, not two. So when Shardama transcended the realm of Maya in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, when Shardama crossed over the barrier of space, time and causation in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, she experienced the various rays of God coalesce. They merged into one supreme God. And this is why she says that from the point of view of dwelling in the Satchit Ananda infinite divine consciousness, from the point of view of dwelling in Brahman, from the point of view of dwelling in this one supreme God, even the various gods and goddesses of Hinduism appear unreal. They appear as Maya. So it all depends on which side of the prism you are. Shardama was speaking from the other side of the prism. And we who are on this side of the prism, we who are firmly entrenched in Maya, we don't have the experiential knowledge to comprehend her statement. Now another analogy I can give you is that of a flight. When we are on the ground, we see skyscrapers, we see huts, we see small houses, we see small buildings. But when we take off and attain to cruising altitude of 30,000 feet, all these differentiations vanish. We can no longer separate a skyscraper from a hut. The same happens in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. All differentiation of name and form vanishes and only one Supreme God remains. The one Satchitananda consciousness that on account of Maya appears divided into the different names and forms of the various gods such as Shiva, Kali, Krishna, Rama, etc. In Nirvikalpa Samadhi, all these divisions vanish and only one homogeneous Satchit Ananda Brahman remains. So it is all a question of perspective. It is all a question of which state of consciousness we are speaking from. Are we speaking from an ordinary human consciousness, or are we speaking from the point of view of attaining to the highest Satchit Ananda divine consciousness? This is the difference, this is the gulf that separates us from Shardama. In fact, this quote of Shardama is a direct testament to the truth that she was firmly established in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Many people make the mistake of thinking that Shardama was an ordinary person. She was an ordinary woman, she was an ordinary housewife. This is because, unlike Sri Ramakrishna, there is comparatively less information about Shardama. We know a lot about the sadhanas of Sri Ramakrishna. We know how Ma Kali appeared before him. We know how he attained to Nirvikalpa Samadhi. But we do not know that much about Shardama. This is because Mother kept herself hidden from view. She did this on purpose. That was her will. Sometimes God-realized sages choose to stay hidden from the public view in order to accomplish their spiritual work on earth. Because as I've said repeatedly, that God-realized sages don't really work from the physical body. They mainly work out of their subtle body. And that is why sometimes it's actually very helpful to remain hidden from view. And Shardama was one such God-realized sage who kept herself hidden from view. But this does not mean that her state of spiritual attainment was ordinary. Just this one quote of hers is enough for us to understand how firmly established in Nirvikalpa Samadhi she was. For both her and Sri Ramakrishna, Nirvikalpa Samadhi was the natural state. Their mind had a natural tendency to soar high and become absorbed in this state. They had to put in fact a strong effort to break this absorption and bring their mind down to the ordinary human level so that they could talk to devotees, they could guide them and live the normal human life. But for us, the situation is the exact opposite. We are so caught up in materialism, in catering to our own desires, our likes and dislikes, that we cannot even conceive of the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. We cannot even imagine what it feels like. So whatever information we have today of Shardama comes from a few of her very close direct disciples. And these people, they were very persistent. They would really keep on asking her many questions, and they would draw out of Mother the answers. They would squirrel the information out of her. And today we owe a debt of gratitude to these disciples for their persistence, because without them we would really not be able to recognize who Mother was. So even the small incident about her and Sri Ramakrishna talking and how she would tell him that I'll go and discuss it with Ma Kali and then get back to you. Even these little incidents are told by disciples. And that is how we can get a sense of how great, what a great God-realized sage she was. Now one of these disciples, of course, was Swami Vivekananda, and he has said that Shardama came especially for the upliftment of women. And Swamiji has said that after the advent of Shardama, women will come to the forefront. And you can see this happening. You can see the enormous progress women have made all across the world since the advent of Shardama. In India particularly, they have gone from being married off by the age of 12 or 13, which was common in Shardama's time. That was the norm. They've gone from this, they've gone from dying in childbirth at the age of 15 or 16. They've gone from being uneducated and deprived of learning to being teachers, fighter pilots, doctors, and scientists. So, this is the transformation that Sharda Ma has ushered through her spiritual force, through the sadhana that she would undertake by being invisible from the public. She was practically invisible. Very few people in her time realized her greatness. So I hope that this discussion on Sharda Ma has been helpful to you. I'm Pulkit Mathur, founder of The Spiritual Bee, and I would like to request you that if you wish for us to make more such content, then please make a donation to the Spiritual Bee Foundation. We are a public charitable trust dedicated to spreading the Advaita Vedanta teachings, and it is your donations that keep our operations running. So thank you and take care.